Hello to you all. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here, because in a conference on aging, you feel younger because aging seems to be something far into the future from the perspective here. So, and I must say, James, that I enjoy very much your talk, and it made me appreciate very much living in this century and not in the previous one. I wouldn't want to be a subject of those experiments that you referred to in the 1920s. They don't seem to be very attractive. In the short time we have here, let me say the following. There is one figure, there is one piece of data that I think is crucial for us to know, to understand, to try to examine its implications, which are dramatic. And that is the old age dependency ratio as it evolves over time. The old age dependency ratio, as you know, is the ratio of the number of older people, meaning above 65 by this definition, over the number of workers in the same population. Okay, the number of, so it's a dependency ratio because obviously the younger people, the workers, have to provide either directly or indirectly for the maintenance, for the survival of the elderly people. So this is a crucial, if there is one number that captures a vast range of phenomena associated with the great demographic transformation, is that number. By the way, you can use, some people use not the old age dependency ratio, but the total dependency ratio, which is the number of children and the number of old people divided by the number of workers, which is a different concept because it includes also the young population. I will argue that this one is more relevant for the discussion here. So where do we stand with the old age dependency ratio? Right now, the average for the OECD countries, the 36, 37 countries, stands at around 33%. So there are 3 workers for each elderly person in the countries of the OECD. Is that high? Is that low? Oh, well, that's extremely high dependency ratio. Just to give you a sense, in 1950, that number was 14%. In 1975, it was 20%. In 2000, it was 22.5%. Now it's about a third. And the prognosis for 2050, the 2050 year, now it's very much on the news because of the Glasgow climate change, what's going to happen in 2050. Well, there is another kind of tsunami, in the making that we don't discuss as much as climate change as this tsunami, because the ratio then is going to be, it's forecasted to be 53%. So there will be less than 2 workers per elderly persons. Okay, that's dramatic. By 2075, it's 59%, but that's too far ahead. Okay, so that's the story. Okay, and that's the key element in thinking about aging in the socio-economic context. Now, what happened? I mean, how did we get here? Okay, to these numbers, and what are the implications? Essentially, when you look at the socioeconomic history of the Western world, the global history as well, with the delay, we start typically this era with the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so we are talking about 250 years ago. That's the beginning of the big change. There are 2 forces shaping society and the economy, operating at increasing speed since then. And these 2 forces, as One, the science, technology, and innovation force, which is transforming the way we manufacture, the way we produce, the way we communicate, the transportation, everything in the material world, okay? And the second force is the demographic force. Two huge forces shaping the world we live in. The first one has brought about tremendous progress. As you probably know, the GDP per capita, the measure of our wealth, or not quite the wealth, but the income and so forth, has increased in the last 100 years, has increased by 500%, so 5 times. At the same time as the population increased dramatically. So it's a tremendous rise in the productive capacity of nations. Not equal, but nevertheless. The second one, the demographic force, is not less powerful. In 1900, the world population was 1.6 billion. In 2000, it was 7 billion, and now it's 2.8 billion people on this planet. What happened is that there were, the forces of medicine, nutrition, hygiene, and so forth, and the economic forces that I described before that allow for the raising standard of living, okay? They brought about a dramatic decline in mortality rates, also a decline in birth rates, but for a long time, you see, these two curves operated in a way that population increased, and it's still increasing. We are at the end of that wave, that the great demographic transformation, which still, because the decline in mortality rates and increase in life expectancy has overpowered the decline in birth rates, and so population is still growing. By the way, is still growing, but marginally in China, even though there, as you know, the one-child policy and so forth brought down dramatically the birth rates, but the increase in life expectancy because of the tremendous economic growth of China carries through that population increase, but it's going to cease and population is going to shrink in the future, okay? Japan, has experienced a tremendous decline in birth rates, started much before, and so population is declining. In many countries in Europe, if it were not for immigration, population will be shrinking in absolute terms, okay? But so you have this process. By the way, Israel is an incredible exception. It's the only country in the Western world and beyond that has a rate of increase of population of about 2% per year. We have by far the highest fertility rate, 3.1 children per woman, which is much more, the average for the OECD is 1.7, so it's, dramatically different, and we have a very high life expectancy, which is also growing. So we are a complete outlier, in terms of these numbers. So put Israel aside, the picture is as I described it. So what we have is these forces operating there, and they have brought us to this point where we have right now a dependency ratio of 1 to 3, and soon it will be 1 to 2, and so forth. Okay. So fine, what's the problem? Nice, very nice. Well, not quite. Not quite, because the institutions of society and the economy have not adjusted to this dramatic change. What do I mean by that? Well, take the age of retirement. At this very moment, as we speak, in the Knesset, they are about to vote, or they are actually voting, on the new budget that includes a clause for the gradual increase in the retirement age of women. So it will be a long process that will take a decade, that will bring it from 62 to 65 in a very, very, very gradual process. Life expectancy in Israel for women, 85, I don't remember exactly the number, okay? So, I mean, the gap between the institution of retirement age, okay, and life expectancy is growing. And even with this change in Israel, it will keep growing, that gap. I mean, right now, you have to contemplate 30 years sometimes, because if you take the, not the life expectancy, but, the average of a certain part of the population, so you can have 20, 30 years of gap between retirement and death. So there is something completely wrong. These institutions, as we know them, the retirement plans and so forth, the age, they were set by Bismarck, in 1870 plus. And then, in the US, were in the 1930s and so forth. But at the time when there was a complete different environment in terms of aging and so forth. Savings have not kept pace with the fact that you need to provide for a later age. The way we behave in terms of healthy aging, nutrition and so forth, we live the moment. I mean, we don't contemplate the fact that we need to accumulate the behavioral changes and the stamina and so forth to have a healthy aging. And we still behave in terms of, in many aspects, okay, of physical activity, nutrition, and so as if we were in the reality of 20 or 30 years ago. So there is a complete mismatch between we are blessed with the longer life expectancy and the way society behaves, the institutions, and we as individuals. So that's kind of the key, the crux of the matter. And, we invest more and more in prolonging healthy life, not just life. Fantastic, I want to enjoy it. But at the same time, we cannot do that without contemplating the implications of that. Now, let's even go further than that. One of the most significant divides in the world as we know it now is the digital divide. Those that know how to, manipulate, use, etc., screens, let's call them for the sake of the argument, and those that don't. For the most part, who doesn't? Elderly people. Elderly people, that was very clear, by the way, with COVID, because many, many things went online. And elderly people had a great difficulty coping with simple tasks. Now you don't have the bank clerk to go to, right? Everything has to be done through the screen, and there will be more and more of that. And I don't need to elaborate. So the digital divide has turned sharply into an intergenerational divide. And if there are going to be proportionally many more older people, okay, there will be many more people that cannot function in a digital society. Okay, so we need to address that. And I want to be very blunt. We as a society, what we have done until not long ago, and still we do, but now we are more aware of it, is that we manage that by putting elderly people away in all people's houses, in all sorts of retirement, blah, blah, blah. Very nice, not inside, so I don't have to deal with the issue. With the corona, with the COVID, when we saw the death rates in old people's houses, the tragedies, the old people dying alone, not just living alone, dying alone, and so forth. I think it had an impact in our perceptions, but okay, I hope that we manage to live with COVID. The question is whether we will manage to live with our elders. And we right now don't have We have not developed the institutions to do that. So what do we need? We need a change in attitudes. We need a change in policies. We need a change in priorities. We need a change in investments. These changes are costly, but we need to do them. We need to extend the working lives of people, not by having people retire later at the same job, 100% full-timers and so forth, but by making the transitions gradual, by having the possibility not only of part-time, but of different sort of jobs without diminishing, without that being an affront to your dignity. We need that. That is a big adjustment to labor and employment practices. We need to start cultivating good health, not that when you are 50 years old, they say, oh, now that my children are out of the house, I'm going to go to the gym. No, you need to start from the very beginning, because there is a cumulative process of developing healthy habits that will carry you through. We need to integrate back the elder in the community. One of the biggest epidemics of our age is solitude, loneliness. And what's the point of growing old, healthy even, if you are separated from society? That's cruel. That cannot be done. So all of that requires a different attitude and different policies. So, what I want to call upon all of you, when you deal with the biomedical aspects of aging, remember this. Because if, again, we may be creating a divergence between the progress of science, the progress of the medical establishment and so forth in prolonging life, and a very sick society that doesn't know how to accommodate that. Thank you very much.
Any question?
Yes, you can explain. Yes.
Choose. He will bring you the microphone. He will bring you the microphone.
Yeah, of course. Who's the first one?
Thank you. As your presentation is very connected to mine, which will be in a few minutes, I want to ask you whether we should be even bolder than you are. And I'm having fun these last months putting on the table the question whether we have to allow the child that will be born tomorrow to know in advance that she or he has 80 years to live.
More.
No. I'm talking of a reform, of limiting the years we have on Earth, because we cannot sustain what you are describing. So we can imagine people being employed until they're 80. The market is going the other way, needing less hands, needing less employees. So women and the age of retirement means that they will not be eligible for old age allowance, not necessarily that they will be able to work. Yeah. So maybe we have to really think outside the box, because we are killing the globe, and we are heading, and science is, as you said, contributing significantly to the fact that we are heading to a very worrying future.
Yeah. So, the question you're raising is part of a more general question, which is, as we move into the AI, the artificial intelligence, machine learning age, that will replace many, many occupations, and it's already happening, but we haven't seen the tsunami yet. I mean, these processes are never linear, are exponential. What will happen? I mean, we'll need less workers and so forth, and so the problem is exacerbated. The issue is exacerbated with life expectancy growing. Well, the short answer is, I don't know, but I have some comments to make about it. Time and again, throughout the last 200 years, we thought that this, technology will provoke mass unemployment or widespread unemployment, and time and again, we saw the creation of new occupations that you couldn't even dream about them. You couldn't know that they were going to exist, okay? That reflected two things. Reflected the new technology, and it reflected new ways where people's activity. So take, for example, the industries associated with leisure. They have grown enormously, they keep growing. There are any number of occupations associated with it. Leisure will expand, I hope so. I mean, the activities associated with leisure, okay? And what happens is that many of the occupations or the activities related to leisure are labor intensive as opposed to manufacturing, which is being automated completely, okay? So there are two forces here, okay? One is the AI, machine learning, digitation, automation, and so forth, reducing the needs for labor force. And then there are the new uses of time, of your time, okay, that lead you to new activities that will require new occupations that are more labor intensive, and so forth and so on. I don't know what the balance will be. We need to find that balance. And the last thing I will say about it is the following. We often relate to technology as something that has a life of its own, and we don't have any control about it, okay? So that's the way it was, that's the way it goes. That's not true. Technology can and is being influenced. I'll give you one example. The space program during Kennedy's administration had a profound impact on technology, on miniaturization, and so forth and so on. Had the Americans not invested in that, we would be lagging in those technologies. So we can choose as a society, as governments, where to invest, okay, R&D and so forth. We can try to move technology in the direction that will support what I've been saying.
You don't have enough time for another question.
Better that way than not having answers.
I have to say thank you. Professor Trajtenberg, you are fascinating. Thank you.